welcome to this concert tonight. My name is Sam Fagan. I'm the professor of saxophone and director of jazz studies here at EIU, and I'm just here to make it. Excuse me?
You're not on.
Not on.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
My name is Sam Fagley, and I direct the jazz program here and teach saxophone. And I'm just here to make an introduction, so I'll keep it brief. This is a very special event tonight. It's the culmination of the EIU Jazz Alumni Weekend. And these folks have come from near and far to pay tribute to the gentleman who's retiring at the end of this semester. Alan Horney, as most of you know, professor at Trombone and former director of jazz studies, is retiring, and he has contributed much to the musical lives and the lives in general of all the folks on stage, including myself. And Paul Johnston and I thought it would be a great idea to honor him and let him lead another band before he gets out of here. So, and I want to thank Paul for organizing the weekend, getting all the legwork done. Thanks to Paul. So this gentleman is a great friend, colleague. I've learned a tremendous amount from him here, and it's really sad to see him go, but I'm glad at least he's not leaving Charleston right away at least. Please welcome Alan Horney.
Come on back at her, sorry. That was Mike Alexander on alto on that tune. John Richardson on baritone sax. My good friend Tom Berkner on trumpet on that. And the brilliant Mark Maglin on piano. Thank you all and good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. This is, yeah, you guys can split, okay. Thank you all for coming. This is kind of a remarkable thing in a lot of ways. We've never had an alumni weekend in the jazz program. The jazz program here is 49, really 50 years old. There have been 4 directors of the jazz program and has a long and distinguished history. We're proud of so many players. We're proud of all these people. We have people playing in clubs and hotels and on bands all over the world. Many guys aren't here tonight because they're playing gigs. So I'm so thankful to these guys, some of whom could be playing gigs tonight, that they're here. So it's all about them, and I'll tell you more about them as the evening goes along because there's some really remarkable people here, and you can probably already tell that, and I'm honored to be in front of them. So that's where we start tonight. Our opening tune was Who Me by the Count Basie Orchestra. We're going to continue with a piece that I wrote as a dedication to my daughter who's here tonight. I'm not going to ask her to stand because I paid way too much for that later. So this is The Jaybird Rides Again. Bird, once again. That is Waylon Schroeder on alto saxophone. John Sybil, a St. Louis musician and works in the St. Louis area. And back in the trumpet section, jazz trumpet teacher at Louisiana State University, Brian Shaw. Gentlemen. Give us while we change bands. Our next tune is from the Count Basie book. We tried to pick a variety of things to play tonight, and what an incredible day. We learned 8 charts in about 3 hours of rehearsal today. And what I should recognize is Ed back there. Is Ed back there? Where's Ed? Where's Ed?
Right here, he's coming.
Okay. I just want to recognize, I meant to do it before he left the stage. Ed Matthews will be out again tonight. He is how should I say this, Ed? He's the oldest guy. Ed Matthews, who graduated in 1968, played in Pete Vivona's great bands here before I came. He's a trumpet player, a lead trumpet player in 1968, playing trumpet and bass tonight. So would you thank me, thank Ed Matthews. Ed drove in from Maryland to be here for the weekend, so we're really gratified about that. This is the Count Basie Band's beautiful ballad, The Wee Small Hours of the Morning. good. On tenor saxophone. Bob played in a band about 32 years ago. How many years did you play in the band? A couple years ago. That's all we're going to get. Bob is the band director, 76, yeah, band director at Argo High School. And I'd like to recognize, also in that section right there, Chris Wendell on bass. Chris graduated in 1984. Thank you, Chris. And is a professional musician working all the time in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'd also like to recognize on that last tune, Robin Kraft in the trombone section. Robin Kraft and his cousin, who you'll hear from later. Robin graduated in 1978 and works for IBM. He didn't want to play. I pressed him that he had to play one, told him he couldn't leave without playing one tune. So that was his one tune. Okay, guys, thank you. Our next tune comes from the book of the great Rod McConnell Big Band, a beautiful bossa nova. This will feature Brian Chessie on tenor saxophone, and also feature Jim Lane on drums. Jim was in my first band at EIU in 1974, and he graduated shortly after that, and was also in Pete Gavona's band before that, and still plays great, but is actually an attorney. Thank you. Brian Chesney, stay here, everybody. Brian Chesney on tenor on that tune. Jim Lane again on drums, and Kevin Hart, the brilliant Kevin Hart, not playing drums, but playing can on that. Okay. Another switch. Now, I forgot to recognize Blair Nuccio, who played on, Blair, what was it you just played on?
That was We Swallow.
Thank you very much, sir. Blair Nuccio on the end of the trumpet section is a school superintendent. Take it back. Up in the Chicago area. This next tune to close our first half is a great piece of music that I've enjoyed playing for a long time. It's written by a friend of mine who was the chairman, director of the School of Music at the University of Illinois, a jazz bass player, Tom Fredrickson. And it features Mark Magdalene on piano and several other guys in the band. We played it many years ago at the Collegiate Jazz Festival and enjoyed playing it all the time. This is Tom Fredrickson's great blues piece, Deja Vu. Please stay. We're going to take a short break, but not without again recognizing the brilliant Mark Maglin, who was a grad assistant here in the late 1980s. He's a working musician in the Chicago area. Let's also recognize Kevin Hart again on drums. And on bass, this one of this weekend's distinguished graduate school acknowledgees. That's not the right word, is it? Is what I do? Designees, honorees. John, the brilliant bassist, professor of music at the University of Northern Iowa in theory and composition, and student of Peter Hesterman sitting right here. Jonathan Schwabe on bass. Also must mention Joe Ott, who played on that tune. Joe Ott recently finished a 20-year tour as an Air Force tenor saxophone player and is now teaching the director of jazz studies at Augustana College. Joe Ott. And my dear friend Tom Berkner in the trumpet section, teaching at Belleville West High School, former director of jazz studies, University of Illinois, and one of the great jazz trumpet players there is anywhere. We'll rejoin you in just a few moments. Thank you. We'll begin our second half with a classic, a chart I've loved for years. I started playing it in John Garvey's band at the University of Illinois in 1972, and I still love it today. This is the Count Basie Band's Vine Street Rumble. must recognize a number of people here before they leave the stage. First of all, the jazz guitarist at Eastern Illinois University and working Chicago musician, played in the band in the early 1990s, late 80s. Or he looks like he's about 16, but he's a little bit older than that. Scott Hesse on guitar. Trombonist on that piece, a student of mine in the late 1970s, went from here to North Texas State University, where at one point there were 4 members of the Eastern Band playing the North Texas 1 O'Clock Jazz Ensemble. I'd like to recognize Tim Kraft, who's a construction contractor in Denton, Texas. Playing in the trombone section, second from the right, Mike Ruckman, a student of mine in the 1980s? 70s, 80s. Mike, of course, is an IT man in Champaign. I must also recognize, I'm trying to get everybody in here in the trumpet section, my good friend and one of the best lead players I've ever had here in the band at Eastern, also is now finishing his doctoral degree at the University of Illinois, jazz trumpet player Mark Cornell. We're going to clear the stage. It'll be a short setup change, and we'll be ready to move to the next part of the program. Thank you. We're just having some fun right now. Well, it wouldn't matter at all if you applauded. We're just having fun. I've been in love with the Four Freshmen, the famous vocal group that started in 1948. And and still exists today, 22 freshman groups later. You can still hear them, they sing all the time. I've thought about doing this for a long time. I've always wanted to do it, and I found the guys who can do it. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But I love the music. These guys all love the music, so we put these things together. And if you can imagine this, last thing I say before we try another one of these, is I got all the music from Ross Barber, who is one of the original 4 freshmen. He's 85 years old. I called him on the phone. Not many people would do a crazy thing like that. I called him on the phone and said, Mr. Barber, this is so-and-so. He's the nicest man on earth. And I said, is there anyone I could get my hands on any of the original arrangements? Unimaginable. He said, I'll give you the name of a guy who can send you all the arrangements you want. So what will this cost me? It won't cost you anything. So just enjoy it. So that's what we're doing. And we've been rehearsing for a little while now. We're going to try another one for you. This is one of the big hits of the 4 freshmen, one of the best known tunes. We won't even say what it is. We'll even say what it is. They'll know it. Let's do it.
Shadows from above. Point Sienna, somehow I feel the jungle beat within me. There grows a rhythmic savage beat. Love is everywhere, its magic perfume fills the air. Sway my heart, in time I learned to care. Point Sienna, from now until the dawning day, I'll learn to love forever, come what may. Until the dawning day, I'll learn to love forever, come what may. Blow, tropic wind, sing a song through the trees. Soon, my love, I will see.
The next one we're going to do is, as a matter of fact, I've read this, 4freshmen.com. You can see all about this group if you don't know about them. They were about to, they'd made a couple of records, 1949, 1950. These were four guys from Butler University, all music majors, who just decided they were interested in doing something like this, and they started out singing like barbershop, which is wonderful music as well. They decided that they wanted the melody on top, which is not rather than the second part. So they sort of pioneered this way of singing. This was the first tune that was a hit. They had recorded it. They were about to make a tour, and Stan Kenton, big band leader, got interested in them. At a point when their record company was about to cancel because nothing was selling. Stan Kenton convinced them to send this tune around to radio stations and let them play it and see if it sold. And 51 years later, the four freshmen are still good. This is It's a Blue World. It's a blue world without you. It's a blue world alone. My days and nights that once were filled with with you away, how empty they have grown. It's a blue world from now on. It's a through world for me. The sea, the sky, my heart and I, we're all indigo hue. Without you, it's a blue, blue world. It's a blue world from now on. It's a through world for me. The sea, the sky, my heart and I, we're all an indigo hue. Without you, it's a blue, blue And we thank you for listening to us. We're going to close with a great piece of writing, really by Pete Rudolo, the famous writer for Stan Kenton Orchestra. This is, we hope you enjoy, Route 66. It winds from Chicago to LA.
66. Down you go through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, and Oklahoma City's mighty pretty. You'll see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Boston, San Bernardino. Won't you get into this nightly tip? When you make that California trip, get your kicks on Route 66.
Singing the top part, former student of mine and brilliant filmmaker, film teacher of filmmaking, Craig Linvall. And a dear friend of all of ours, a 30-year teacher in the profession, a brilliant musician and pianist and vivist, our good friend Joe Wolf. On guitar, Joe Barris on drums, Paul Johnston on piano, and Dave Fink on bass. Just a short break. Folks, if the light person might bring the lights up here, I'd like to recognize people who are alumni. They're not playing, but we have a few other people here who are great musicians and former students of the jazz program. I'd like to recognize specifically a brilliant trumpet player, Bill Lauer, Rob Lauer, they're brothers, and Bill, bass trombone player, and anybody else who's here who I might be forgetting. Alumni, would you put the lights up so these folks can stand up and be recognized? Would you put the house lights up? Yeah. I also want to thank at this time, when we continue with our program, so I don't forget it, I want to thank my two colleagues who've done so much to help bring this together this weekend and bring this off. My good friend and colleague, Director of the Jazz Studies Program, Sam Fagley, and also the person really responsible for all the legwork for getting all this done, Paul Johnston. If they're around, would you please step up? And before we continue with Horney, I also want to mention recognize some people who are important contributors to the program. I want to recognize there are three members of the Jazz Studies program, all brilliant musicians who were good friends of mine who passed away. And I want to dedicate this next tune to them. First, a brilliant trumpet player from the 1970s, arranger, composer, bass player, working musician, Greg Mitchell. Trombonist, wonderful trombonist and friend of mine who taught in Northern Illinois and Harvard for many, many years. His lovely wife, Marilyn, is playing baritone saxophone right now. Mr. Gary Gert. Marilyn, would you please stand? Dear friend who was here during the Pete Vivona days, and when I came, he'd come to all of our concerts, got to know him to the point he'd invite me to Champaign for dinner all the time. Stan Kenton, lover and bass trombonist Dave Morris passed away just a few years ago. I'd like to have a round for these folks. And we'll continue now with Bob Mintzer's great chart, Heart of the Matter. must recognize several people again. On the tenor solo on that tune, the first graduate of the Jazz Studies degree program at EIU in 1990, brilliant tenor saxophonist, baritone saxophonist, lifelong musician, and working professional musician in Lexington, Kentucky, John Richardson. Currently working on his doctoral degree at the University of Missouri at Kansas City, trombone student of mine from 1990-something.
To 2000-something.
Yeah, okay, I know that plan. Your parents know that plan too.
We're still paying it off.
Yeah, I'm working on his doctoral degree at UMKC in jazz composition, Eric Chapman. Recent graduate of the program in jazz studies, bass trombonist. You've seen him play bass and tenor tonight. About ready to start his master's degree at the Vermont School of Music in Denver, Scott Clements. Fine trombonist student of mine, graduated about 3 years ago, maybe 3. Currently teaching as the band director at East Alton Wood River High School, Chris Alexander. Early 2000 graduate from the trombone studio, recently finished his master's degree from Indiana University and is about to take an audition on Monday for the Jacksonville Symphony. Brett Evans on bass drum. Member of the late 1980s band, played the trumpet section from Kentucky, and I forgot what you're doing, Monty.
I'm a salesman.
He's a salesman.
It's living.
It's a living, exactly. Monty Mumford in the trumpet section. The chairman of the Social Sciences Division at Parkland College, brilliant young trumpet player, came in the 1980s. 70s, 80s. Chairman of Social Science Division at Parkland, Amy Myers. And on this end, a man has been a friend of mine for years. You met Craig Linvall in the vocal group. This is Craig's brother, Mark, who is a principal in Danville, Illinois, a great trumpet player and music teacher for many, many years, and a dear friend. And his wife, Marty, is here too. Mark Linvall. Mike Alexander, currently the band director at Alumni, Illinois, working musician as well. Mike Alexander, saxophonist. Waylon Schneider, who was wailing on that last tune. He's teaching in Jerseyville. Waylon Schroeder. And next to Waylon on the end, tenor saxophonist, played in the band in the 1980s. Yes. 70s. Kurt was a fine tenor player and arranger while he was here, wrote a lot of stuff for the band, is currently in the IT business for what company? Abbott Laboratories, and shows dogs professionally, and had a national champion dog at that big show in New York just a couple of years ago. I've already introduced once again Marilyn Gerd on baritone saxophone. We'll take just a short break to change the stage, and we'll finish our program. Thank you. Meantime, again, Mr. Faber.
Just want to take a moment. This appears to be a group of folks who like jazz. So, as such, I'd like to hear about a concert coming up on Thursday featuring the EIU Jazz Ensemble. We have a few guests on that evening. Great trumpet player from Champaign, Jeff Helgeson, will be featured with the band. The mother of one of our students, our lead alto player, Josh Marcus, his mother's going to come in from Kentucky and be featured as a vocalist with us. And Last but certainly not least, we're going to feature a fine trombonist who's taught around here for a while and is not going to be for very long. Professor, I'd like to recognize him one last time tonight. Will be playing with us Thursday, Horney.
Before we close tonight, I want to thank you all again for being here. It's our pleasure to entertain you tonight. I want to recognize a couple more people that I have not recognized so far tonight. In fact, by this point in the program, I can't recognize anybody. Playing lead trombone on this tune, a wonderful trombonist, graduated from the studio about 3 years ago. 04. Working for his father's company, and don't tell us what it is, it's a very complicated deal. He works for his father's company and is a St. Louis working musician, John Siddle, on next to him is Tim Gillens, a graduate of the trombone studio 3 years ago. Currently working for the Ag College as an IT person at the University of Illinois and also a musician, Tim Gillens. And in the saxophone section, Laurie Caudle Buckman, who killed me today by how great she played. She is a general music teacher in the Kankakee Public Schools for over 20 years. And once again, because you haven't seen him there tonight, on the final tune of the night, Ed Matthews, who played in the band in 1968. Ed, we're delighted to have you here. Ed Matthews playing bass on our final tune. We'll close with a California writer's great shuffle called The Rhythm Machine. Thank you again for coming.